We are the voice and the thunderous call. We are the doom of tyrants and the downfall of the foe.
Good evening, dear listeners. Today I shall narrate to you the tale of what the legions were before their reunification with their Primarchs. I'm a bit old for all these complicated names from the Warhammer 40k universe, so if I've got the pronunciation wrong somewhere, please let me know in the comments. I'll keep it in mind for my next videos. The image of the Astartes legions during the era of the Great Crusade has long become a symbol of the universe, equal to the later orders of the Space Marines. A vision of warriors from a time when the Emperor's dream still pulsed with life and humanity inexorably marched towards its zenith. An age when names such as Horus, Mortarion, Magnus and other treacherous Primarchs were still wreathed in glory, not hate and disdain. A time when the Space Marines were not yet fragmented into orders of battle monks, but were a singular, formidable force capable of shaking the very stars. Nevertheless, even this image of ancient warriors, led by their Primarchs to the triumph of the imperial truth, was not the original one. There were times when the Emperor's sons were still deemed lost, and the legions conducted their conquering crusades as orphaned children, unable to fully grasp their magnificence. Some of them, against all odds, still grew akin to their forebears, and their reunification with the Primarchs was a celebration, a moment of greatest joy. Others were lost and so far removed from their progenitors, it can be said that they never truly found their Primarch. Yet, even in those ancient days, every legion bore its distinct identity, moniker, and favoured tactics and methodologies of warfare. Thus, the First Legion, now known as the Dark Angels, did not commence their saga within the forests of Caliban, but upon the poisoned wastelands of ancient Terra, where they partook in the final confrontations of the Unification Wars. At that time, they were not even called the First Legion, for no other legions existed. The Emperor dubbed them his Angels of Death, and it was they who proved the supremacy of the Astartes over the Thunder Warriors. They crushed the last, most intransigent kings of Earth, and it was they who coerced the priests of Mars into an alliance with the Emperor, against whom a considerable portion of the Omnissiah's servants then stood. Being the foremost among the formed legions, the Angels of Death long outshone their brethren in glory and sheer numerical superiority. Only in the midst of the Great Crusade, when they suffered grievous losses during the Xenocide, did their dominion wane. It was only the reunion with their Primarch and the infusion of fresh blood from the knightly orders of Caliban that, in essence, saved the Legion from oblivion. The colour scheme of their armour before the union with Lionel Johnson remains a mystery. However, it is clear that the Legion readily accepted their father and the changes he brought to the Dark Angels. In the end, by that time, they had already been divided into hosts, having become the Wings, and they embraced their new name with zeal. They were already the Angels of Death, and the Primarch only cemented this status. The Third Legion was forged in the final stages of the Unification Wars upon Terra. Notably, many of its finest warriors were recruited from the courts and blood vassals of Europe. The nobility of Europe selected the best of their youth and offered them to the Emperor of Mankind, as a tribute of respect and penitence for their previous insubordination and humiliations at the hands of imperial warriors. In the following decades, other dynasties of Terra followed Europe's lead, swelling the ranks of the Third Legion with their youth. Thus was forged a brotherhood of war, whose martial lineage traced back to the unfathomable ages of human history. In these early wars, the Third Legion was deployed to bolster some of the most pivotal campaigns of the nascent imperial army and, in many instances, led its troops directly in battle. This markedly distinguished them from many other Astartes forces of the time, which were often deployed en masse to serve as shock troops, supported solely by heavy war machinery. Coordination and command of such auxiliary forces seemed a natural pursuit for the erstwhile aristocrats of the Third Legion. They possessed a profound ability to discern the strengths and weaknesses of the various armies in service to the Emperor, drawing upon the ancient traditions of Terra's military aristocracy. This insight led to assured and brilliant outcomes. The Antarctic clearance campaign during the Unification Wars, for example, was marked as a victory for the Antilles Army Group. But in truth, any detailed analysis of the ancient conflict reveals that it was the Third Legion who devised the tactics and strategy for the campaign, leading it to successful culmination. The Legion's achievements at the dawn of the Great Crusade were the reason behind their exclusive right to bear the Palatine Aquila, the personal standard of the Emperor. Until the bitter end of the Horus heresy, when this practice had spread across the Imperium, they remained the only legion bestowed with such an honour. This honour was bought with blood during the Proxima Uprising. The 16th cohort of the Third Legion, appointed as the Emperor's honour guard upon the official annexation of Proxima to the Empire, fought and perished to the last warrior, side by side with the Legio Custodes, during the sudden attack by rebels on the ceremonial square. Through their sacrifice, the Emperor was saved, wounded by vortex weapons. In recognition of the valour displayed upon the battlefield, the standard of the Aquila, for which they had fought with such ferocious determination, was bestowed upon the Astartes of the Third Legion by the hand of the Emperor himself. It was to forever become their sacred relic, alongside the right to end the insurrection with an exterminatus, an honour of apocalyptic proportions. Yet one must never overlook the curse that plagued the Third Legion, a flaw within their gene seed, causing the Emperor's children to suffer from tissue degradation, inevitably leading to their flesh decaying while yet alive. Only the discovery of the Primarch was their salvation from this doom. Fulgrim, having healed them, assumed the mantle of both their father and warlord. Essentially, he made no alterations to the Legion's structure, for they were already exceptional, bearers of the Emperor's name and his Aquila. They were already on the path to perfection, and Fulgrim merely led them further along it. For decades, this legion of iron warriors was the battering ram of the Great Crusade, the hammer used to crush every indomitable fortress or citadel that dared to stand in the way of the Emperor's will. The Fourth Legion became synonymous with retributive warfare and mastery in the art of siegecraft, both in defence and in assault. The Fourth Legion, like their brethren, was founded on Terra in the closing stages of the Unification Wars, in the mid-ages of the 30th millennium, and a significant amount of information about their early history has been preserved. Warlike arms tribes, blood-soaked bands and technical enclaves upon Terra's surface supplied the Legion with the bulk of its initial waves of recruits, as the rebellious Auric region was wholly engulfed in the unification process, swiftly becoming one of the staunchest bastions of loyalist allegiance. Evidence attests that the gene seed of the Fourth Legion exhibited adaptability above the norm, with the rate of implant rejection notably low, especially when compared to the challenges of large-scale implantation encountered with other strains that were not rectified until the acquisition of the gene laboratories of Selenar. This advantage meant that the combat might of the Fourth Legion swelled rapidly. It burgeoned into several fully combat-ready battalions, whereas some of the other nascent legions remained incapable of fielding forces for over a century. This, in turn, meant that the Fourth Legion was swiftly thrust into active duty alongside the First Legion. The Fourth fought first upon Terra, initially in the annihilation of the last resisting cities and states, and then during the pacification of the Sol system. Confirmation of this fact can be found in the preserved frescoes within the Imperial Palace, depicting the battle honours in the orbit of the ice station Echo and Mare Yasht. The latter name is perhaps the most notable, for it was the key battle in the punitive Venus campaign, and it was then that the closed ranks and the proud steel banner of the Fourth Legion went forth to war under the direct command of the Emperor himself to break the spine of the deadly armies of the Witch Warriors. In those times the Legion was yet without an official designation, though amongst mortals and other Astartes it was known by the name Corpse Grinders. Presumably this moniker was bestowed due to their combat doctrine. The Fourth Legion was never one for the subtlety of considered operations or cunning stratagems. From the outset, they unleashed upon their foes an overwhelming barrage of firepower, literally grinding fortifications to dust under the volleys of heavy artillery. This straightforward approach, however, often led to significant losses within the Legion, with one battle alone costing them 29,000 Astartes. It was this that heralded the gradual dimming of the Legion's glory, as triumphs were claimed by their more successful brethren. The discovery of their Primarch brought both immense joy and a terrible reckoning. Having studied the history of his legion, Perturabo concluded that the failure lay with each individual legionnaire. The Primarch imposed a decimation upon the Iron Warriors as punishment for their past failings. Every 10th Astartes was executed as a lesson to the rest. And though this decision was met with fierce criticism from the other Primarchs, the Iron Warriors that survived the punishment became an even more cruel force, breaching any defense. The White Scars before reunion with their Primarch bore many names: Star Hunters, the Blood Debt, Pathfinders, Grey Ghosts. In those bygone ages, the Legion was but a phantasm, existing not as a singular entity, but as scattered cohorts within each Imperial fleet. Bereft of uniform colours and heraldry, each detachment adapted their armour's hue to the environment of the worlds they descended upon, forsaking garish colours for the subtlety of camouflage. In essence, they were specialised groups wielded by Imperial commanders to execute precise operations. This decentralised structure led to an insidious issue. The Legion faced a continual dwindling of recruits, whilst the Space Marines inevitably suffered losses. It was thus that Jagatai Khan, drawing upon the nomadic warrior ethos of Chagoris, was compelled to reforge the Legion from the ashes, shaping it anew. Now it is near impossible to envision the Sons of Rus outside the paradigm of the 41st millennium. Their deep-seated ties to the culture of Fenris and the legacy of their Primarch have turned the Space Wolves into an order of Astartes, both unique and instantly recognizable. Yet it has not always been so. Indeed, precious little is known of the Wolves prior to the discovery of their Primarch. Vanished are their original name, livery and heraldry. Known only is their inception as a formidable strike force, bearing the spectre of inevitable death. Hunters adept in tracking and annihilating any adversary. Regardless, the Space Wolves stand as one of the legions that only truly found their identity under the guidance of their Primarch, transforming them into the unparalleled warriors they are renowned as today. The same can be said about the Imperial Fists, of whom it is only verifiably known that they too partook in the unification wars upon Holy Terror, and their armour was predominantly clad in hues of grey. Much like the tale of Rogel Dawn himself, the saga of his legion is veiled in shadows and bereft of captivating detail. Even their original moniker has been lost to time, along with any reliable records of the campaigns they waged at the dawn of the Great Crusade. And although it may not appear so, with the scant information at our disposal, it can be stated that the chronicle of the Imperial Fists commenced only with the discovery of their Primarch. The 8th Legion also continues this pattern of obscurity. The Night Lords became the first known name of the Sons of Kurz, though whispers suggest that they referred to themselves as Children of the Night. No records of their heraldry or colours have been preserved either. However, some testimonies of their early history still exist. The 8th Legion was steeped in blood from its very inception. The first recruits of the Legion were taken from the subterranean prisons of ancient Terror. In vast caverns dwelled men and women who had transgressed the laws of their overlords, doomed never to see the light again, nor to breathe fresh air. They lived their lives in fear and sightless darkness. In these lightless lands, law was non-existent. Only the strongest and most ruthless survived in the underground jails, growing in cruelty and guile, sustained by the constant inflow of brutality from the hive cities above. But amongst the millions of souls dwelling and perishing in the subterranean dungeons, not all were smote by the higher realms. Amidst the bloodshed and fear, children were born, cradled in darkness and nurtured amongst death. All who lived beyond 10 cycles were as pale, silent beings moving without sound. The captives named them the Children of the Night. Even the most ferocious murderers would not seek them out by their own volition. From these ashen offspring, the Emperor of mankind forged the first warriors of the 8th Legion. austere, with flesh so pallid it mirrored ash or crushed bone. They were a stark departure from their legionary brethren in manners and visage. The gene seed of the 8th Legion melded well with the essence of its inaugural recruits. Beyond their pallor, the gene seed bestowed upon the sons of the netherworld the ability to pierce through darkness. This gift was also a curse, compelling them to witness the light of the stars through the filters of their helms' visors. The first task the Emperor ordained for his 8th Legion was to bring to their knees those who believed that the sins of yore could persist in the Imperium of man. Some among those who bent their knee to the Emperor did so believing it was their sole recourse. Others, witnessing the rise and fall of the techno-barbarian warlords during the Long Night, deemed themselves merely part of another transient accord. Crimes against the new order were manifold and varied. From the Saragorn enclave, whose genetic abominations persisted in shadow, to the selection of beasts at the court of Antius and the march of 10 million. All these atrocities revealed that even in the face of the Emperor's mighty wrath, some would revert to the forbidden paths of the Long Night. When such transgressions demanded not mere obliteration but retribution, to serve as a stark lesson to all, the Emperor unleashed the 8th Legion. Such measures were deemed fitting for the early 8th, whether due to their inherited genetics or the amalgamation of their lineage and the ideological indoctrination of the Imperium. The warriors of the 8th seemed predisposed to moral absolution and the pursuit of retribution. In the moral framework of these legionnaires, there were no shades of grey, no degrees of guilt or innocence. Truth and falsehood were as day and night, indivisible and absolute. Darkness was a realm of guilt, lies and monsters, and those who dwelt in darkness knew only the language of blood. A message of swift and merciless vengeance for their deeds. Justice brought light into darkness, and justice was neither warm nor caring, but indifferent and cold as the edge of a blade. It is no surprise, then, that upon reunion with their Primarch, the Night Lords embraced the cruelty and unyielding nature of their father with zeal. In essence, for the legionnaires, little had changed. Only now the Night Hunters had a leader. It is hard to believe that the noble warriors of the 9th Legion were once called corpse-eaters, and verily the crimson hue of their armour was not an official livery, but a dense layer of blood baked onto their plate. In the early years the Blood Angels bore greater semblance to the Berserkers of Khorne than to those noble warriors led by Sanguinius. The reputation of the entire Legion was akin to that which, millennia later, would befall the Order of the Flesh-Tearers. The warriors of the 9th Legion were oft described as a savage bloodstorm, tearing through the ranks of their adversaries, leaving the fields of battle as feasting halls where the legionnaires fully sated their thirst for bloodshed. It required no small effort from Sanguinius to forge the 9th Legion into the Emperor's warriors, known now for 10,000 years as the most noble and benevolent Astartes of the Imperium. Nonetheless, Sanguinius accomplished this monumental task over his legion post-haste. Having become the Blood Angels, they now heard their former epithets as slurs. The Iron 10th Legion was known by such a nickname since the inception of their history. However, they could have been called Stormbearers, but this title was forsaken in favour of Iron Hands. Also, in contrast to many other legions, the history of the 10th Legion is well documented, tracing back to their progenitors from Old Albia, a region of terror located in the north of the British Isles. They were widely utilised in the final stages of the Unification Wars, yet it was during the era of the Great Crusade that their true nature was unveiled, purging countless worlds of the Orc taint, of which the most renowned was 02, 34, or Rust, a barren world rich in pyrochemical deposits, oxide deserts, and the corroded remnants of majestic cities long since fallen to decay. This world was part of a vast Orc empire, sprawling across more than 60 inhabited star systems, and it was the fall of Rust that heralded the doom of this empire. Here, the Legion forged its battle doctrine and earned the glory that it would carry into its reunion with its Primarch. Among all the legions of space marines created by the Emperor of Mankind in the dawn of the first founding, none were as ferocious as the World Eaters. Others, like the Night Lords, might claim to bring worlds into imperial compliance through fear alone. The White Scars and Space Wolves might descend without warning, ravaging worlds in their path. But for the World Eaters, every campaign meant but one thing: the enemy and annihilation. Annihilation not through viral bombs or atomic firestorms, but with chain axe and bolter. Worlds, one after another, drowned in the blood of their inhabitants. In the final days of the Unification Wars, the first recorded battle of the 12th Legion took place during the Saafric Liberation. There they served as the spearhead of the assault forces, conducting direct strikes to annihilate the enemy's strength both in open battle and upon fortified emplacements. And they were capable of repelling an assault, despite their relatively small numbers, through sheer courage and fury. However, after their initial battles, it seems the 12th Legion was kept in reserve by the Emperor himself until the subsequent reconquest of the Sol system. Perhaps this was a precaution against an unforeseen turn of events in the war. Or, as some evidence suggests, they were held back to be unleashed as a weapon should treachery arise amongst the Emperor's close ranks. All the while, the 12th Legion was maintained in a state of constant readiness, tirelessly training and steadily growing in number. In those instances when the Legion was plunged into battle, they acted with almost jubilant cruelty, tearing apart any enemy they faced without mercy or hesitation, disregarding risk and uncaring of their own losses. It is said that during this period, the Emperor himself dubbed the 12th Legion his war hounds, paying tribute to the cruelty and tenacity with which the Space Marines fought to subdue the narco-addicted hives. Alas, Angron, their Primarch, took no joy in the name or heraldry of the newly formed Legion. Having endured a youth enslaved within the unforgiving crucible of Nuceria, he harboured no further desires to be a mere hound for another's bidding, and thus, in a defiant proclamation of sovereignty, he renamed his legionnaires the World Eaters, the moment he ceased exterminating them upon their encounters. The illustrious 13th Legion underwent a monumental transformation upon the advent of their Primarch. At the dawn of history, they were heralded as the Warborn, for they amassed their ranks from the most indomitable regions of Terra, after having pacified them through conquest. Similar to their brethren legions, they had carved their saga in the Unification Wars, where they emerged as some of the Emperor's most uncompromising warriors. Their doctrine was built upon the bedrock of victory at any cost, disregarding both their own casualties and collateral devastation. And it was only through Robut Gilliman that they were reborn as the Ultramarines, famed across the cosmos for their strategic and tactical supremacy. The Twilight Raiders, now known as the Death Guard, like the iron-wrought 10th Legion, traced their origins back to the olden armies. Their core was composed of warriors who initially resisted unification, meeting the Emperor's host with fire and steel. However, upon witnessing the might of the Master of Mankind, they transformed into some of the most ardent advocates for unification. These warriors, who had once stood in opposition to the Emperor, laid the foundation for the 14th Legion. Throughout the Great Crusade that followed, they proved their loyalty time and again with swift and devastating strikes upon the positions of the Xenos. Warriors clad in grey armour, their right hands daubed in crimson, led the Emperor's legions to victory time after time. Their swift war bore no resemblance to the future combat of those hailing from Barbarous. The discovery of their Primarch cleaved the Legion in twain. Those recruited by the Primarch from the poisoned world looked upon the recruits from Terra with disdain, and the fact that the numbers of the Dusk Raiders dwindled only exacerbated the situation. To some extent, they never truly found their Primarch, for Mortarion, in essence, reforged the Legion anew, eschewing those who came before him. However, without this schism, the outcome of the Horus heresy might have been uncertain, for Nathaniel Garrow was precisely a son of Terra. Curiously, the Legion of 1,000 Suns was thus named from its inception. This moniker was bestowed by the Emperor himself when the first cohort of 1,000 Astartes stood in formation. In those ancient times, they donned armour of the purest white and bore as their sigil a grand M. Knowledge of their deeds prior to reunification with their Primarch remains scarce. It can be confidently stated that they were employed in quelling the tech barbarian uprisings on Terra. Yet, beyond this, information fades into obscurity. Also of note is the fact that after their meeting with Magnus, the Legion's numbers swiftly dwindled back to 1,000 Astartes due to the warp mutations that inevitably claimed the lives of Legionnaires. If thou yearnest to gaze upon the visage of the lunar wolves ere they were joined with Horus, cast thine eyes upon their armour bestride the triumph at Olenor. For Horus was swiftly found by the Emperor, and thus the Legion had scant time to forge its own distinct identity. Yet they had waged war both on Terra and beyond its confines. In the beginning, they were known as those whom the Emperor employed for the preemptive obliteration of potential foes. Their advent was not heralded by the thunder of cannons and volleys of bolters. They came in silence. They waged wars unknown to the foe and vanished, having swiftly executed their mission. And naught but the corpses of enemy leaders and the burning edifices spoke of any presence at all. Their name, Lunar Wolves, was bestowed after the first pacification of Luna, as the nascent imperium of man ventured forth from Terra for the very first time. In essence, Horus inherited a legion already honed for battle and chose not to implement significant alterations within its structure. Save perhaps for the infamous Mournival, which was not an official formation per se, but rather served as a vital conduit for communication between the Primarch and his Astartes. The Imperial Heralds, later known to all as the Word-Bearers, acquired their initial moniker due to, in essence, laying the foundation for the Imperial doctrine known as compliance or flame. In the grim darkness of the far future, where battle and strife tear the galaxy asunder, there existed a legion, foreboding and resolute, who, before the onset of each campaign, would dispatch a lone Astartes clad in obsidian armour, his visage obscured by a skull-formed mask, to issue an ultimatum to their foes. Originally, they were to be the heralds of the imperial truth, yet their reunion with Lorgar cast them into a fate far more dire. The Salamanders, though lacking an official designation, were known amidst whispers as the Dragon Warriors. Like their brethren, their genesis was on ancient Terra, but the tapestry of their lore preceding their consolidation with their Primarch remains shrouded in mystery. Their colour and heraldry before this era are lost to the annals of history, with certainty residing only in the fact that their onyx skin was not a birthright, but a consequence of Nocturne's harsh embrace. The thread of the unknown continues with the Dustclad, also known as the Raven's Guard. It is perhaps a consequence of the original Legionnaires bearing too stark a reminder to the Primarch of foes he had battled in times past. Thus, all Terran-born were dispatched to the farthest reaches of the expeditionary fleets, there to end their tales, far from where the Primarch sought to forge his legion anew. As for the Alpha Legion, there's no point in talking about Alpha Legion in this context, for Alpharius was with his legion from the very inception, orchestrating every clandestine operation until the moment arrived to declare their existence openly to the cosmos. Let it be known that though each Astartes legion is inexorably linked to its Primarch, it is imperative to acknowledge that their saga commenced long before the Great Crusade reached the Emperor's sons. This history, perhaps no less captivating, even though myriad facets of it have been lost in the abyss of ages.